head over to the 5th slide in the Jamboard. So keep your atlas on hand. Sean, if you could post in the chats and so on. We are in the atlas, in the event program. Today, we're on the 29th UTC, and we're in the organizer's mid-summit session. You can watch it and rewatch it right here. And then after this segment, we're going to be back into the rhythm of guided sessions and flexible time all the way on through till the closing session, when a lot of the team seeds that we're going to hear from a little bit today and those that form in the time between are going to be presenting in the closing session, either live if they can join or with a pre-recorded video, which I'm happy to help you record. And I'm also happy to explore with anybody who wants to some of those skills like recording video. So anything else that you want to mention about the Atlas, Sean, or where to go?
We'll dig into the team seeds form and seeing all the teams that have already seeded this summit. That is in the Atlas as well. No, but I think this is the main document that just has everything you need to know, not only about this particular summit that we're at right now, but also the broader context of the community, different roles in our ecosystem, how to get involved and learn twice by doing in these different roles, help support the team, the community. And then also, if you want to tip open the platforms, just a little reminder that we use 3 main tools in the tech stack for adventurers: Gather, Keybase, and Coda. You can look at the first live stream if you want a deeper dive into it, but reading these pages here in the Atlas will give you some helpful tips as well. Eric, anything you want to add as an overview just around the Atlas document?
I've got now that you find the team seed form, like I said, and the list of teams already seeded. I copied in the link there. Do we want to give opportunity for anybody on these seeded teams to step up to the microphones and talk about their teams, or we don't? They're under no obligation.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. So we're in the Atlas. On the left side under teams, the team seed form. You can fill out this form just directly in the Coda. And then on the following page, there are some cards or a view in a table with, it looks like, 5 teams that have already submitted seeds. So if any of those teams want to say something on the live stream in a few minutes, we would love to hear from you. So maybe just send me a message in Gather if you would like to join on the live stream. Otherwise, there's no worries. We'll spend the second half of this session after the live stream, like also hearing from teams and those that haven't filled out the form yet. But yeah, I agree. The purpose of this session is really twofold, depending on where people are at. If you want to be on a team, then we want to show every way how it's possible to join and to find a team where you're a valued participant. And if you don't know, then we'll give you some more information. So whether you do or don't know that you want to be on a team, hopefully this session gives you the information you need. Sean?
Just kind of where we are in the context of the summit. We're about middle or halfway through. Up to this point, we've mostly been individuals getting to know the concepts, getting to know each other in the cohort. And this is really the point where we're really starting to focus on the teams. And really, at this point through the closing live stream, the emphasis is heavily on the teams and getting into this team setting and learning by doing with diverse teammates, and specifically focusing on if the team opts into this, really participating in the closing live stream, and that being the emphasis of sharing whatever you want at that point, not only with the cohort but also publicly, just because these live streams are public, and sharing anything around how you've brought your diverse perspectives together. What problem you really focus on, how to define the problem, maybe even what feedback you might have received about the problem or the potential solution. We're not looking for a solution to be built already. We're really mostly focused on those harder questions up front around shared purpose and what's been detected as a problem and how to validate that a problem is what you perceive it to be, and that and ideating a few different approaches to solutions. So we can expect to hear definitely from teams in the closing live stream, but it would be fun to see if any teams want to step up here and gather and just hop up on the podium in a few minutes. That would be cool to give a middle point update.
Eric?
Yeah, I'll vamp a little bit unless somebody else wants to from the teams come up and talk. But I just wanted to set out a reminder to go down and visit the community boards, the feedback boards in the bottom right of the gather space. There's one for general feedback and different aspects of Complexity Adventures and Summit. And there's come up a couple of others, one around exit to community and another one on placemaking, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if Sean or Daniel, you want to tell any more about
Yeah. Those. So what Eric's referring to is in the cafe room in the bottom right. There's a few embedded Miro boards in Gather. That one of them is focused on overall feedback, and then two of them are going to be used for community team sessions or the internal teams we have in Complexity Adventures. One around placemaking or building the sense of place, like this Gather.town space, for future summits, and also one for the self-organizers community team. And this process of slowly exiting the community or having it be any processes that are very centralized right now in an organization to be laid on the table so that the community can kind of step up and self-organize over time through deep time. That's one of our goals. What Daniel's pointing out right here is in the Atlas as well, there's also a feedback session where there's two forms. This isn't the same as the Miro feedback. These are forms in Coda where you can give feedback on a particular live session or the overall summit. So definitely, no matter how far you got in the summit, or even if you stop showing up really early on for whatever reason, we really want to hear from you. And when you're ready to kind of close out your summit experience, hitting this summit feedback survey in the Atlas is extremely helpful to our community.
Let's talk a little bit about the kinds of teams that form, just to give a little bit of the lay of the land there. So broadly, there are two kinds of teams. Community teams, so Complexity Adventures teams that we maintain a rhythm on and whose system of interest is Complexity Adventures and our ecosystem as well. And then there's private teams, which don't have to be secret teams, but they're teams that are just entirely adventurer operated, and they make every single decision from the beginning on through. Of course, if somebody does want to form relationships or a team that they don't want community visibility around, that's great. No further action is needed. But we really hold up the private teams that do keep that door open and do want to include new adventurers. And we hold the exact same standard to all operations of Complexity Adventures. So every aspect, which we can look at now, of Complexity Adventures is operated through community teams, which are kind of like topic or facet of interest related working groups. Some of them are active on a weekly timescale with 1 hour per week and 0 to 1 hour per week of asynchronous work for any given person. Others are irregular, and we might just have a single meeting when the time arises and a need. But all of them are there for people's interest in activity, and they all have somewhat extensive playgrounds and sources of information for people who want to share their expertise or their availability in any of these areas, as well as to build expertise in those areas and all the kind of sundry skills that come along with it, as well as doing that in the context of a team that's very complexity forward, wants to learn and apply complexity, wants to help others do the same through Complexity Adventures. So those are finances, legal, outreach, placemaking, summit, which is organizing the summit itself, tech, self-organizers, and teams. Sean.
Just to highlight, how specifically to get involved and how to kind of read this. We'll improve the Atlas over time and make it clearer. But these meeting times we're seeing, again, everything's in UTC because we're a global community. But this is the weekly time for an hour that Danny was saying that these different committees or community teams meet. And they always meet in our public gather space. So what we're calling the World Map now. We'll link it out as we start to spin up the monthly base camps, where they'll also be in the same space, but they're always in the same public gather. They're in the public Complexity Adventures calendar. So if you're following just the public calendar of events, all these community team meetings will appear, and they all operate on public quotas. So they have a quota for each community team that's open for anyone to read, and they have certain processes that make it more accessible as well, such as having meeting minutes whenever we gather, so people can catch up on the meetings that they weren't at and get kind of caught up and able to jump in. And these are meant to be standing teams that allow anyone to come in and learn complexity by doing while benefiting the community. So we just encourage anyone, if you're curious at all, just show up at this time in the public Complexity Adventures World Map, which I will link in YouTube right now and gather, and just say hi, and we'll catch you up. Eric?
And to emphasize that no experience is required. I attended my first summit November of last year, and I think I went dark for a couple of months, and then stumbled out of the blue. Said, I got some time in my hand. I'll see what's happening over here, and stumbled into some of the organizer sessions and the meetings, and got sucked into helping out with the organization of this and half a dozen other things. Careful how far you wade in is all I would say. But it certainly is a rewarding, great time with the people who are here.
Thank you, Eric. Indeed. Come on in. The water's fine. And mind the depth. These are the community teams. So again, email us via any of the ways that we've been in touch with you before, or just show up at these times, and we really look forward to engaging with people who even just want to give their thoughts or feedback that way. All right, now let's turn to the second category of teams. And these are like the teams that you all form and that we all form as adventurers, which is all of us. So these are the private teams. And we also have a community team for those who really want to engage in that type of meta and service to improving the team's process. So if you have some other strategies, there's no fixity in what we do here. It is just the output of another hardworking volunteer team. So if you see a way that you can improve it, let's literally do it, and we can implement it in less than a month at a base camp and in 6 months at the next summit. So, Eric, do you want to describe the team seed form, or I can?
If you could, I'm trying to add Michaela's team to the list.
Oh, awesome. All right. So this is a form. There's a direct link provided, or you can just complete it right in Coda and just hit submit. And so the form asks a few different questions, like the name and the contact information, the issue that your team will be addressing, and some next directions or intentions. All questions are optional, or you can write, I don't know. There's some questions about how complexity plays into your approach and what kinds of outcomes, really just to start conversations, not because paragraphs are needed in these optional questions. The form asks, would your team like to share more about itself in the closing ceremony of the summit? And there, the options are either that you can present live for 5 minutes if you're there synchronously, or you can email a recorded video to the email address provided here, organizers@complexityadventures.com, or we can just mention it, but if there's nothing that you want to share, then we won't share. Are you open to new members joining your team? So we'd love to see yes, and are always happy to see that in almost all cases it is yes, because the teams forming here can be coming from and through and to anywhere. And so keeping the door open on that learning group or book group or discussion circle or accountability check-in or research direction or startup, these are all ways that we can build edges and live up to our values too. And there's some other questions about skills and if there's any guides you're working with or any guides we can help introduce you to. So you hit submit on that team seed form. Through the internets, it goes. And now we can actually in real time see which team seeds are forming. So we have 5 here right now so far seeded. Some of them are probably here just in Gather at this moment. Others might have gone off to sleep or exercise or so on. But once you complete the team seed form, you'll see right here, all of these teams open to new members is yes. So all of these teams with the public contact details, these are emails and or Keybase usernames that you can get in touch with to learn more about these teams. So where else can we go? If somebody else in Gather from one of these teams or not wants to come up and share anything, they are absolutely welcome to do so. Or whatever you prefer, Sean. Unmute and then go ahead.
Thanks. I think, just looking at this now, just to give people watching a sense of the types of projects that are coming out of this particular summit. It varies every summit, and the teams can be literally anything. They can be like, I haven't submitted a team seed form, but I'm actually going to form a team seed just around learning to create more tree diagrams over the course of this weekend, and it'll disband on Sunday. Like, that's just meant to be a learning team for the weekend. But some teams, they'll spin up they're planning on incorporating after the summit, and will be running for years. Some are aiming to write papers together and apply for grants together. At least in front of us right now, definitely, ChatGPT is taking the world by storm, and it's definitely taking Complexity Adventures by storm as well. So we've got several. I see you're looking at Ecotone Frog Summit. Is that from last? Is that from this time as well?
New Team seed just dropped.
Nice. About the press.
Michaela asked to add it to make sure that everybody knew that this was an existing team, and
nice. And and this team actually started in the last summit, and it actually just had a great session a few hours ago, and is now present again at this summit, recruiting more people into the Ecotone ideas, which we love.
I'll just add that what we're seeing in the team seeds table here is the teams that are forming like literally right now at this first ever Complexity Adventures Summit. So that's amazing. You are some of the first teams of Complexity Adventures. And also, just for a little bit of context from some earlier events from Complexity Weekend, you can see more broadly the kinds of teams that have formed. So here are several dozen teams, and it's always the tension. First off, staying in touch with teams, which we look forward to new systems to develop to enable teams to make requests and share information better within the community. One of our key needs, and also the trade-off of showing what other teams have done and how that can be seen as like a sort of spark for our own creativity in the moment. But what is written here, this is not the limiting enclosure of Complexity teams. These are like some fun sparks that have flown, and many of these people work on these projects again to this day, I know, in many settings, and I know many other teams that aren't simply on this list. So that's part of the fun when we come together, because we actually do have a life outside and in between of summits, and we all have a lot of interests. And of course, we recognize people's like bandwidth constraints and just challenges in scheduling, because it can be exciting to like want to join all of these teams. But maybe there's a way to do something that's fit right for you at the time.
Mm-hmm. I think just looking at some of these, so for example, if you just scroll down to the table, GPT agents for curiosity, right? It's just interesting to think, how do we use these large language models, to help people find jobs, use an API connection to LinkedIn. and surface different jobs. So if that's something that's of interest to you, you've got an email right here. You can contact Deb. They say yes, they're open to new members. So there's a few ways to go in terms of teams. You can either be the person starting the team and submitting that team seed form. You can be on the lookout for teams at this summit like these and contacting people that are working on teams that are of interest to you. You can join the community teams. You can take teams that you already are in that are pre-existing teams, and you can submit a team seed form and just interface the team with the community. Complexity Adventures does not attempt to own anything related to these private teams. There's no risk at all of connecting your team to our community for support. The only thing that we really ask is that if you do say yes, you're open to new members, that we make sure to construct a non-exploitative relationship where, depending on who shows up and their contributions in earnest, you really consider, co-ownership if that is appropriate, or some structuring of the relationship that is mutually beneficial to all the participants involved. So I just want to stress that point. But I just want to be really clear that Complexity Adventures will never attempt to own anything related to private teams.
I'll add one note on the team that I seeded. So again, thanks, Sean, for describing, like, if you want to join a team that's already warm and inviting, we have the community teams, and you'll be doing incredible work for Complexity Adventures, and it's super fun and already operating. Then whether it's something new or a thread that you've had kicking around as a side project, you can be the one who writes that team seed form. Also, you can join someone else's, and you can bring that kind of like a guide energy, even just to a conversation like, wow, we should just seed that. But I'll mention the team that I seeded just a few hours ago, because it wouldn't have arisen except for the sessions that we had. So Corinne's session was on getting ready for transmedia. And so exploring these kind of like multi-format, interactive and engaging digital experiences, though I'm sure there's many more and other ways to say it. And then in the following session with Yolanda and Gamma, where we were learning what 1 + 1 = 3 and all these other important topics, the metaphor of the honeybees waggle dance came up. And from the earlier session, we had talked about how the artifacts themselves, like the transmedia creations, are not the process of actually creating them. Like what's happening on the chessboard isn't what's happening in the mind of the people who are playing and watching it. So I'm not sure where it's going to go. But I saw the team seed form as a way to open this door to kind of capture that spark of like, oh, what if we do study and describe the dance and the footprints and use that to invite others into the dance and to look at historical footprints and ask what if. It'll be fun. So I encourage people to reach out if they're curious about that. But if anybody else in the last minute just wants to quickly say hi, otherwise, basically, Sean will give a closing note on the live stream. And then for the rest of the session, we will be like in smaller groups discussing things with Team Seed, people who are around, and just making sure that everyone is where they want to be as they're heading into this second half of the summit. All right, Sean, closing note, what would you like to look at?
I think one last point about teams, and we'll see if Eric has anything to chime in, and then maybe if you can go to the supporter slide. Teams are a really good way to learn complexity, applied complexity. It's you're around diverse perspectives. You're all learning complexity together with some tangible system in front of you that you're unpacking these rather abstract concepts into. So, it's choose your own adventure during the summit. You can spend the entire time having a conversation in the corner of Gather and Keybase, and that's totally fine. But participating in teams, even if it's just for the weekend, we highly encourage it, just as a way to really cut your teeth on this applied complexity material and with friends. So Eric, any last points? And then I think we'll close on the supporter slide.
Yeah, and that goes for the community teams as well, what Sean just said about application of complexity. While one would anticipate, and there are rather just complicated problems and tasks and things to achieve and take care of. It is an emerging community with lots of moving parts, and the community team self-organizers in particular is finding its way and figuring out how to facilitate the flow of information, the exchanges and the like, so that the community is able to inform the larger dynamics of the organization. Hence, the reminder that go to the feedback board. That's part of that. But there's probably other mechanisms too. Leave a note on the feedback board of what might work. So done.
Awesome. My closing note on that, and then Sean, you can have the last word on the Jamboard, is self-organizers is like a structural, like a morphological growth. There was no self-organizers until some people thought it could be that way. And it just shows how we don't just fine-tune. We're not just polishing something right now. We're actually doing something that's structurally dynamic, not just in the details. And hopefully people can see that as an opportunity to enter and co-create, not to feel like there's some sort of factory type polishing that's happening, because once you join a meeting, you will see it's the last thing.
Nice. And so this slide here, and also it's actually in the Atlas under supporters as well, the role. It's just, I'm going to keep shouting about it because we're just launching it this summit. We are in the process of kicking off a kind of a small dollar fundraise campaign for just anyone who's ever, attended a Complexity Adventures event, has had some sort of value given to them. Our events are not ticketed. There's, no financial barrier really to entering into this system. So if you feel like any sort of value has been generated for you, please give back and pay it forward to future adventurers and teams. We could really use this money to really help us with some back-end improvements to organizing, which is unsustainable in certain ways. And so there's some immediate contracts in the tech community team that will leverage this money, as well as replacing Keybase, which is now kind of a defunct tool. It's not supported anymore. And we are migrating to Mattermost, which will integrate with our website over time. We have a vision to integrate all these tools into our website for one unified experience. So if this is compelling to you, please go to the bit.ly/give-to-CA, which is ultimately a PayPal. And it's not tax deductible yet. We are filing for 501c3, and we'll have a different fundraising initiative post to that. But this is just in the meantime to really help us with some more urgent things that we could use some finances and resourcing around. So if you've been impacted in any way, in a positive way, please contribute.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Thanks for that. I'm going to close the live stream at this point. Everybody who's still in Gather, we're going to just continue on with the team's activities. So thanks everybody for watching the live stream. Now it's over.